Kia ora, and let's talk about employment. Today we're going to answer 3 big questions. Number 1, what are the standard HR documents that you need as an employer? 2, what on earth do we do about payroll and PAYE? And 3, what if I don't have employees yet? Can I just use contractors? Today's module is sponsored by Yellow People and Culture, who are a boutique Wahine Māori owned HR and workplace health and safety advisory service based in Ōtautahi, Christchurch. They are driven by a mission to change how employers and people view HR in their business, to shift the mindset from box ticking and getting around the legal stuff to genuinely wanting to look after and do the right thing by putting the well-being of their people first. Because of course, without your team, you have nothing. They're especially keen to help startups because they truly believe that starting out right with the right foundation will set you up to succeed. So number 1, what are the standard HR documents that you need as a business owner? First one's obvious, employment agreements. Get a good quality template that is written for you, not for someone else's business, that will reflect your values, your culture, and will serve you well for a long time. You will probably need to have different types of agreements for casual, permanent, and fixed-term employees, as they have different conditions and entitlements. For example, a casual employee cannot have fixed hours or days and times when they are working, and a fixed-term agreement needs to have a very clear reason for it being a fixed term. Both of these agreements have differences in holiday entitlements. So you need to know the differences and be very sure about which type of employment your employees will fall into. And you need to know this before you have them sign an agreement. Errors in employment agreements can be very costly to rectify, so this is really essential to get right. Number 2 is a position description or a job description. Your employees must know what they are employed to do and what is expected from them, and so should you. They should always include the primary tasks and responsibilities, the reporting lines, any minimum legal requirements, educational qualifications that requires, and any licensing requirements for fulfilling the role. This should also reflect the advertisement for the role while you're recruiting, because no one likes surprises and people usually apply for roles because of how it's described in the advertisements. So let's make them match. You should also set up things like the purpose of the role, how it fits into your organisation and contributes to strategic goals, plus outlines the performance objectives and indicators, like how you can tell they're performing the job the way they should. Number 3 is standard policy documents. There are a few essentials here, but you can go on as big as you want to. They're often combined into an employee handbook. Health and safety needs to be considered here. These are things that your employees need to know, i.e. non-negotiables for how you expect them to work and behave while working in your company, and things that are relevant to their role, so like a motor vehicle use policy for people who use company vehicles. Combining these and making them available to your employees in the form of a handbook is a really fantastic way to keep them all in one place. It's easy for them to access, and you can pop in other types of information that they will likely want to know along the way, such as what day they will get paid or how to apply for leave, other general housekeeping bits and pieces. Makes it easier for you and them. The reason these are such a fabulous idea is that they save time and effort in having to drip feed the information to your employees. They have their questions answered before they even ask, and it gives greater confidence to your employees that you are a professional employer who knows what you are doing and you are dedicated to giving them the very best start with your organisation. So, question 2. What about payroll and PAYE? Their advice is to either outsource this to a payroll specialist, so you know it's done correctly, or do a payroll course before you start employing. The Employment Relations Act and the Holidays Act go hand in hand, and trust me when I say you really don't want to be taking chances with payroll because it can quickly become a problem and create disharmony if people are paid incorrectly, and rightly so. Yellow aren't payroll experts, so they're not providing advice in this area, but they do know that payroll errors and issues which are recurring can seriously damage the relationship between employer and employee, because no one likes to feel uncertain about getting paid what they expect, because people have bills. And don't forget, they're entitled to be paid those things. The she'll be right mentality so many of us have with other aspects of our business, rightly or wrongly, cannot be applied when you are talking about team members. There are so many tricky areas in calculating payroll. It's not necessarily as straightforward as you think, especially where leave payments are concerned. It's absolutely best that this is left to experts. There is a multitude of ways you can do this. Xero, for example, does it. There are things like Smartly Payroll, which does it. All makes it easier because this isn't something you want to spend a lot of your time on. And invest in a payroll course. They really are the best way to learn what it is you need to be doing. And question 3, what if I don't want employees yet? Can I just hire some contractors? Yeah, sure you can. It's a great solution where you're in a transformative stage of your business, but you still need an agreement and you still need a role description to avoid any misunderstandings down the track. I started with contractors. It was great. Contractors and employees have different responsibilities, they have different obligations and entitlements. So it is really important to be 100% clear about these when you engage someone. It's important to note that these distinctions are not solely based on how a worker is labelled, but on the actual nature of the working relationship and the degree of control and independence the worker will have. Misclassifying workers will lead to legal issues and financial penalties. Therefore, it's really essential for both employers and workers to understand these differences and ensure that their working arrangements align with the relevant New Zealand employment laws. You cannot just call anyone a contractor. You can do various checks and comparisons to help classify your workers, but if you are doing these independently, i.e. using an online tool, you should probably still have an HR professional run their eyes over it to be absolutely certain before you have your worker sign a contract. In a recent court case, it was actually brought to light that many businesses in one particular industry, especially the smaller ones, have been hiring workers on an hourly basis and calling them independent contractors. But what the court emphasised is that it's not the label that matters, it's how the working relationship actually functions in practice that determines the worker's status. What does that even mean? Let's put it simply. So just because everyone in an industry uses a certain label, it doesn't mean it's legally accurate. There was a previous case where the court said that the industry's common practices should be taken with a grain of salt because they might not actually reflect the legal status of the workers involved. So what's the big deal about this court decision? Well, it's really significant for both the business and the worker in this case, and here's why. The worker can now claim benefits like sick leave and holiday pay, and they also have the right to address any personal issues or grievances. These are rights reserved for employees, not contractors, and it dramatically increases the financial commitment that that business is making. So if you haven't budgeted for it because you classified your workers wrong, that can get expensive. So the long and short of it is, here's the takeaway. It might seem easier for a business to label someone as a contractor to avoid all the obligations that come with employing them. But remember, just because you are using the contractor label, it doesn't mean they are a contractor. You could still be on the hook for employee responsibilities if the actual working relationship leans more towards the employer-employee. So in short, it's a big deal. To wrap up, taking care of your people is as important as taking care of your health or your vehicle, and investing the time and money into prevention is going to be much more effective, much kinder, much nicer, much more ethical, and much less costly than fixing problems once they arise. So at Yellow, people and culture, they're not just about the paperwork, they're about driving change within the employment landscape so that everyone can go to work and be safe, feel that they belong, and thrive.